Hello, wonderful colleagues. I am Dr. Wilson, and I'm here today to talk about the ethics of business law. So let's get started. You know, I was listening to a disgruntled customer in a store the other day. He was very angry because pre COVID 19, he had bought certain auto parts that came with a warranty. Now, we do know that as accountants that a warranty shows up on the accounting records of our clients. And also, as attorneys, a warranty is a valid contract between the retailer and the customer. So the customer needed to return the item and actually had the warranty with him. But COVID 19 regulations restricted the retailer for allowing that item to be returned, and the customer was livid. And so I often think about in those situations, of course, the customer walked away angry, screaming, shouting, let me talk to the manager, let me talk to headquarters. But regardless of who he talked to, nothing changes the fact that businesses, we are customers, everyone is subject to the limitations that have been brought on by the coronavirus and the COVID 19 situation. So the customer had to walk away not getting what he wanted. But I couldn't help thinking about what are going to be the accounting and legal implications of retailers, of different types of businesses, because they can't keep certain promises that they made prior to COVID 19 because of public health reasons. Well, the truth of the matter is, there's yet to be any great or any framing legislation that tells us how to handle a situation like that. The store owners are given a guide as to what they have to do, and in most cases, like these people had to do at the store, they have to suffer the wrath of the customer. But what will that look like on the accounting books, and ethically, what does that look like? And what are we talking about when we talk about ethics? There's no universal rule to ethics. We do remember the great fiascos of the late 90s, early 2000s, all of the accounting firms that were defaulting on their promises to their clients, had actually stolen money from their clients. Some great financial institutions at that time, Enron, and also their auditing company, Arthur Andersen, violated all types of SEC rules and put out false financials, and accountants in Arthur Andersen actually giving companies like Enron unqualified auditing reports, which were so wrong. And it cost so much, not only financially to clients, it cost a lot of reputations of CPAs and attorneys, because you saw all this massive fraud. Now, of course, this fraud was always there, but these particular episodes begin to bring it to light. And what seemed to happen is it seemed to be like this ball that began to roll and got bigger and bigger and bigger. And it brought ethics to the forefront of the accounting and legal professions. But no one really can define ethics, because we all are different in the way we look at things. If we go to Black's Law Dictionary, and also my addition to it, when I'm talking about ethics, I'm talking about of or relating to a moral action, conduct, motive, or character, professionally right or befitting, conforming to professional standards of conduct. And I put in parentheses, because of our current environment in the physical, online, and global business environments. We've got to be honest. COVID 19 is not only changing the present, it's going to change the future. And there's certain things about the environment that I believe will not go back to the pre-COVID situation or pre-COVID environment. You know, it's interesting, when Black's Law Dictionary, this is the version, this ethics was defined in actually the 1990 version of the Black's Law Dictionary. And look at what it's saying. Let's break it down. Of or relating to moral action. If you had been in the store that day when that client or that customer was very upset, you know, the particular employee who was talking to the customer, he was rather saucy. So, I'm 54 years old. So at that age, I guess he's young 20s, I would never have. I actually worked in retail at the probably the same age that this young man was. I would never have talked to a customer like that. It would have been an immoral action, regardless of what the new store policy was. I would still think ethically, you would be polite. And the adage always seems to be true that the customer is right. And so a wise employee would try to frame the narrative so that the customer could at least feel some rightness. And this young man was more irate than the customer and actually escalated to a very uncomfortable environment. Other customers in the store, that's got to impact revenues and all of that. So what is moral? I believe that that particular response from that young man was immoral, but in his mind it was moral because he had rights also, and he didn't want a customer yelling at him. So it's moral action, conduct, motive, or character. I like the word motive because we all understand as CPAs, accountants, and attorneys that we need to have right motives because right motives support good character. And so the motive ought to be, we know we need to make a living. We have to make a profit, but we also need to make a profit with the right goals in mind. Then it says professionally right or befitting. Now, I recently took a trip to a certain state that obviously favored one of the 2020 presidential candidates over the other. It had beautiful stores, beautiful shopping, and of course we were all masked up and everything, and this was actually just a birthday excursion. But it was so obvious. They wore the masks, they had the signs in the door, and I believe, like everyone else, the Constitution allows everyone to have their own political opinion. I certainly believe in the First Amendment. However, the point of retail is profit. And anytime you do anything that goes against that, to me, that's not professionally right or befitting. I thought to myself, and all of these people were so kind in all of these different little stores that we ventured in and out of, that you're really hurting your chances of retail. And this is not when you want to do this with your loud political statement. In your private time, please do that. Do whatever you want to do. But in these times where unemployment is soaring through the roof and retail is really suffering unless it's in the online environment, don't do anything that's going to turn off a customer. I just thought these loud political statements would be a turnoff to a person who didn't like this particular candidate. I just simply think that's not the atmosphere for that. So conforming to professional standards of conduct, and I did say in the physical, online, and global business environment. And why did I say that? Because COVID-19 has divided the legal environment of business. You do have legal, you have face-to-face. You have online, which is growing. I was reading an article this morning in Bloomberg, and they talked about the different industries that have actually profited because of the COVID-19 environment. Online businesses are really, guys, going through the roof. People face to face. They've got things they've got to confront. You've got a lot. I saw in New York, and I saw a recommendation that might still been in Bloomberg, where they were saying, don't be too quick to bring your employees back in by January 2021. As a matter of fact, wait until the summer of 2021 before you consider it. And so that's what we're talking about. As we conform to a new environment, how do we make sure that we're ethically, as far as our accounting is concerned, that we're ethical as far as the law is concerned? We have to look in these different environments. For years, I taught the legal environment of business, but nothing ever came up about what to do in the online forum, what to do even globally. Global interactions is changing the way we do business. It's actually a good thing for those who can reach out and who can learn how to use the online environment to keep going. Too many businesses are shutting down because owners don't know how to make that transformation or make that change. And so I'm here today because not only do I want you to consider with me the ethics of doing business in the online and the face-to-face and the global environment, I want you to make sure that we know how to conform our thoughts and our behaviors to the changes that approach us. If you go and you look at the companies who are thriving right now, that's exactly what they've done. They have conformed unto what is going on right now. And so no matter our age, I just mentioned, I just turned 54 years old. But one thing that I know is that if I'm going to remain relevant, then I've got to transform my skill set to fit what is going on right now. So let's just look at a couple of things. When I talk about that face-to-face environment, well, you know what that is. We're going in face-to-face. What does that look like now? whatever industry it is, whatever business it is, it probably looks like a lot of distance between employees or the employee and the customer, and certainly a lot of masks being worn. There are people who have different opinions of wearing the mask. I happen to ascribe to the school that, wear a mask. If it can help save people, wear a mask. But my husband actually visited a shop where he walked in with a mask, and the owner told him at the door, "No, we don't wear masks in here. If you're going to shop in my store, take off that mask." So the face-to-face environment, which is really the most dangerous environment that you can walk into during COVID-19, it doesn't look like it used to look. We have to make considerations as we own our companies, as we work for other companies, and as we legally guide and perform accounting services for others, that we give the best advice to people, especially if they choose to go into the face-to-face environment. There are certain businesses that cannot conform totally to an online environment. Think about healthcare. I was amazed the last checkup I had that it was actually a Zoom appointment, but that's a regular checkup. What happens if you are sick and you must go in to see the doctor? I actually have a very close friend who had an uncle who did no more than go to his doctor's appointment. Within a couple of days, he contracted COVID and he died within 48 hours of checking into the hospital. So there are all types of legal implications. When is it ethical? A lot of times I heard a woman complain. Her daughter was about 8 months pregnant and was going in for an ultrasound. And the woman actually had posted herself on YouTube very angry because she could not accompany her daughter to the ultrasound to see how well the baby was doing. She was just going on and on and on, but she could not see that the hospital's regulations that only the patient could be inside the facility was not to bring harm or to divide her from her grandchild, but it was to protect her health and to protect the health of her daughter. How do you deal with that ethically? What's the best way to do it? Online, of course, is booming. I'm guilty. I'm an online shopper. I was before COVID-19, and now I'm doubly so. And so in that online environment, though, you've got some ethical challenges. How do contracts survive in an online environment? What happens when you default on the warranty that you've given a customer or a client, and that warranty is on your accounting books? How are you going to account for that? Is that going to impact when you have your books audited? Will that impact whether or not you have a qualified or an unqualified set of statements? And that's important, because if you need to borrow monies from banks, well, you and I both know that no bank is going to lend you any money if your accounting statements are qualified. You want unqualified statements. How do we conform our legal documents in the online environment in an ethical way so that we can stay on top and our businesses can survive and we can be in tune and in step with accounting rules and regulations? We must consider these things. And globally, this is new. We don't really have any leading guidance as far as global interaction. We're having to conform as we go along. We have to figure it out. And that's why we're here today, to think about ethically. We might not know specifically legally what to do, but we should know as attorneys, as CPAs, as accountants, what good ethical behavior is. Again, we don't have that definition, that basic definition of what a good ethic is. Accountants, especially CPAs, we are guided by the canons of our profession. Attorneys, we are also guided by the canons of our profession. And we ought to know, what to do on top of that. You see, a good accountant, a good CPA, a good attorney not only knows the rules, he or she knows how to build great ethical bricks on the foundations of those rules. I can remember being in law school, and I had a business law professor who simply gave us this advice. He said, do as much as you can and try to get away with anything that you can up to breaking the law. I profusely disagreed with him then, and I disagree now. Those types of actions will always find themselves at the front door of the courthouse and could put us out of business. And then, as people, we ought to want to be ethical. We ought to want to treat our clients in such a way that is respectful. I just believe in the old adage that you treat people the same way you would want to be treated. So, as we serve our clients and as we take care of our own business, we've got to be sound and ethical. So today what I want to do is I just want to look at a few things that could impact us in different environments, especially when it comes to the online. So much has been written from state to state, from industry to industry, from profession to profession about how to act in that physical face-to-face environment. But like I said, that's changed because we have COVID in the air. What do we do now that everything is changing? We're changing from that physical environment to broadening that online environment for safety purposes to being able to transact business more and more on a global scale. This is beautiful. This is wonderful. As long as this is something that we can learn to do in an ethical way. So let's just look at some different areas. We're going to look at antitrust, contractual breach, employee benefits, government contracts, intellectual property, international trade, labor and employment, public health emergencies, the implications of taxation, and the exposure to COVID-19 in our workplaces. And this, of course, is an inexhaustive list, but these are some things that I thought were important that we can cover. Again, we don't yet have the guidance. I have no doubt that over the years, we're going to see the court cases come out in different regions and different areas. Would not be surprised if we have a court case that goes up to that mighty U.S. Supreme Court and it shall rain down more information as to what we should do legally. But we need to go back to just being good ethical people. One person I truly admired in law school was my constitutional law professor. And he always talked about being, as an attorney, a gentleman or a lady. And he talked about, and it's funny now because you can turn on the television and see so many attorneys advertising. But what he said to us is that a gentleman would never do it. In other words, he was saying an ethical attorney doesn't need to advertise. He or she has a reputation that goes before them, and that is all the advertisement that you need. I'm very well aware that times have changed, but I still like what he said. He said good character and ethics, they go before you. They advertise for you. Not mad at people who advertise. That is something that is perfectly okay and good. But I'm saying before we do any of that, we must be ethical people. So let's start our journey. Let's look at the antitrust area. What happens in antitrust areas? Well, we're talking about whether or not people are conforming to antitrust laws. I remember seeing where the heads of the great organizations, I think it was Apple and Google, it was this year, a couple of months ago, they were all called in for the first time because they have such a grip in their markets. And what the government officials, when they called them before the Senate, they were trying to figure out if the great monopoly they had violated antitrust laws. Now, let me explain to you the background of antitrust. Let's break the word down. You know, there was a time where you went into the market, and if you were good at what you did, people chose you, and that's the way you grew. But in the marketplace in the late 70s and 80s, you had certain organizations, just like the ladies and the gentlemen who had to go answer to the Senate earlier this year. You had a piece of the market that you earned. But it happened to be that, and a lot of companies have been guilty of it, it's called tying. As a matter of fact, Bill Gates was convicted of that as far as Microsoft was concerned. And what happens in tying is that companies will sell you one product and tie it to another product that without you buying the other product, the secondary product, the first product does not work. For example, with Bill Gates, when you bought into his Microsoft package, his Microsoft office or whatever he was giving you, you had to also use the browser that he had developed. And that was deemed to be a violation of antitrust. So antitrust, though, the area of antitrust came alive again, 60s, 70s, 80s, because Ma Bell, or the phone company, had such a hold on the telecommunications market, which at the time was nothing but your home phone. That's before all these new and neat things came out. And nobody else could break into the marketplace because Ma Bell or BellSoft had such great power. And so the federal court, is a great decision. Federal court stepped in and said, no, we need to break up the trust. In other words, Ma Bell or BellSouth held all the telecommunications in a trust, in a lockbox, if you will. And so because of the federal ruling, the federal government was able to step in and break up that trust. And thus we had anti or against the trust, or busting the trust, not allowing someone to have too much control. Well, that's why we have so many different providers now in telecom, because of antitrust legislation. But it looks like it's come back around again because, again, they brought in the heads of these famous, I think Facebook was there. They were all there. And what the Senate was trying to figure out is, are you intentionally targeting people and locking them into your graphs or locking them into your trust? Or is it because that's just what people want? And the verdict is still out on that. But here's the thing in the COVID-19 environment, and that is that people, of course, are choosing more and more to use online platforms. So, of course, you're going to see things like Disney online go through the roof. You're going to see Amazon go through the roof. You're just going to see those things, not because those companies are tying or requiring anything, but because people are choosing this. But think about the attorneys for these guys and these ladies who had to counsel them before they went before the Senate, because truly, are they repeating what BellSouth was doing for the first 3/4 of the 20th century? Or is it that people just by choice are choosing what they want to choose? Here's the thing that accountants and CPAs need to think about. Now, suppose a verdict were to come back, or an action were to be taken against these major companies or against any company, and they were told, you know what, you're doing too much business, you need to back it down, all of these types of stuff. What if they go into litigation? Well, you know what that's going to do for your company? It's going to put a going concern on your company. Is this company going to survive this litigation? Are people going to back away because they see that the government is against the type of control they have in the marketplace? So is there a going concern? And so a lot of these companies also, because of COVID-19 regulations, when I started with the first story, don't have the authority to keep their word in antitrust environment. When they promise certain things to their customers or things of that sort, you might have had a company come out, an online company, and say, you know what, we promise you this. I think of a case a couple of years ago, I even joined it, where you could get an all access pass to the movies. Me and my husband love to go to movies, and my favorite aunt. And so, oh yeah, I'm on top of that. So here they had, these people were giving you this opportunity, and I think it was with Regal Cinema. And so we could go every day for first it was $9.95 a month, and then it was a student rate cheaper than that. Then it went to $19.95, to the point that in just a few months they had a monopoly over the movie market, and all of the other providers were very upset. This is a violation of antitrust. You've come in and you've taken over the market. Well, what happened is that even Regal realized that this is not, I think it was called Movie Pass, that they were losing money. They weren't benefiting. They couldn't keep their word to the people. It just wasn't good. And so here you are all in the midst of it. And the good thing that happens is they eventually shut that down because it just wasn't going to work. But as it blossomed and bloomed, it was a potential antitrust matter. So here are some things that you do want to think about if you are a CPA or an attorney, an accountant in an antitrust environment. You know, Collective action. What limitations do businesses face in communicating or coordinating with their competitors and developing a collective response to COVID 19? That's a great question. If I have to do business against you, how am I going to work with you to make sure that we're on the same page as far as antitrust or collective action is concerned? How do we make sure that we have that trust behavior? Is it going to trigger litigation? Will it be a going concern? You and I both know that when you do those financial statements for a publicly controlled company, you've got to put into the notes any potential, any probable or possible litigation that's coming up, which can impact the going concern of the company, which could cause potential lenders and potential donors to say, no, I'm not touching you. Because you know what? You've got a going concern. You don't have that together. So you know what? In that antitrust environment, we got to go back and review the contracts that our clients have with their customers and also the relationships they have with their competitors. You cannot work with a competitor and give away a competitive edge, yet something must be done so that the regulations and rules of COVID-19 can be obeyed in an ethical way. How do you do this? How do you remain ethical if you have no ethics? And say you have in your particular market and what you're doing, you have a meeting of the minds of the great people. Like suppose all of the people who were called to in front of Congress were to decide to sit down and try to talk about measures in the antitrust area. Well, if you're ethical, then you're going to respect your competitors. But if you're unethical, you'll use that as an opportunity to get trade secrets, to try to get in on the other side. And we don't want to be those people. Also, distribution and preferences in times of supply chain disruption. So here you have antitrust environment is that if a company is unable to produce enough output to satisfy demand for its products, what limitations does it face in allocating its production among its customers? Online is booming. Today I got the email that it's Amazon Day or Prime Day. And of course, I'm a Prime member. So what happens if Amazon can't fulfill all of the things that they want? Also, I saw that in response to Amazon, Walmart.com now has a membership. It's cheaper and supposedly it's wider. You know how Walmart is. Walmart will start with a thing and then it will just blow out. I remember when Walmart started in the pharmaceutical area and nobody thought anything about the little pharmacies being added to Walmart. Now Walmart is taking over the pharmaceutical industry. They tend to do that. Anytime Walmart touches something, you just give them a minute, all right? Because they're coming up on top. So what's going to happen if you can't fulfill all of those online orders? What are you going to do? What's the ethical thing to do? Should you put a disclaimer up that says that due to the high volume of sales, we may not be able to deliver at the exact time or within the time frame that you're used to? Should they just give a broad delivery date instead of saying it'll be there Friday, October the 16th before 9 p.m.? Should they say it will be there within the next 5 days? You don't know. What should you do in that environment? What type of concerns might you have for your client? I had a client who had American citizenship, though he wasn't born in America, and he and his family, as a matter of fact, opted to live in the native country. But the reason that he had American citizenship, and it helped him because he had an Amazon store. He had a product that he sold on Amazon. Very profitable product. Right now, I haven't talked to him in months, but I can't help but wonder, how's he transforming? He's not even in the States, but he's making money because of his Amazon store. What will he have to do to conform to make sure that he is not breaking antitrust laws? Whatever the products are that he sells, what if his sales boom beyond anyone else? Is that an antitrust issue? Is that something that could lead to litigation? Could it lead to a qualifier being placed on his financial statements? These are good questions. Now, this is big. Contractual breaches. a lot of people, a lot of business owners, you yourself as service providers, you may not be able to live up to all of the terms of the contracts that you had. If I go back to the situation in the car parts store, the owners of that store, the managers, were not trying to be unethical. They were not purposely breaching a contract, and yet they did. The customer presented his warranty. That's a contract. And the warranty promised that if he brought the part back within 90 days, it could be replaced. But the new COVID-19 regulations for that company in that state said, no, not until the threat is over. You've got a lot of things that people will not accept back. You know, Walmart has always been notorious for their beautiful customer service, but even Walmart puts out a disclaimer now as to we can't take clothes back, we can't take this back, we can't take that back. So in the face of contractual breach, you're going to have customers who have clients who don't care about the health threat. All they care about, like this man in this car parts store, is you promised and you broke the contract. You as yourself, as attorneys, as CPAs, as accountants, you're going to have clients who are going to say, but you said you could get this done by such and such a time. Now, one of the things that happened in 2020 as a response to COVID-19 is that the tax deadline was extended beyond April 15th, giving people more time. So for a lot of CPAs, I know for me, I don't care. It's just built into me that the deadline is April 15th. So I never even considered that. But you might have so many clients, you might have had so many, if you actually do tax returns, you might have had so many clients that you said to them, listen, you've got until such and such a time before these taxes are due. And for that reason, I won't have them done by April 15th. Well, if you've got a standing agreement with a client and that client may say, wait a minute, no, I'm not comfortable with that. Just like me. I don't care how many times you extend the deadline. I'm going to have everything in by April 15th. I tell my clients up front, I don't do late taxes. Don't ever come to me asking me. I stay with my clients. I prepare them and I make sure that they give me everything I need because I want every last one of them to file on time. Of course, there's no such thing as perfection. If it's beyond the control, that's fine. But at the same time, I want things done up front and ethically and on time. And being timely to me is just a part of being ethical. So we have to think about contractual breaches, something that is very concerning. You know, I ran across this in a nonprofit that I belong to. And that is that we couldn't do certain things and make certain decisions in an online environment. Because of the COVID threat, we began to meet by Zoom, where our bylaws make no provisions for how to decide this and how to decide that, you know, in an online environment. So we actually had to have like an emergency meeting and transform our bylaws. But one of the things that did concern me is that I saw a few people, I thought they were acting in their own self-interest and not in an ethical way. Because to act in an ethical way in this COVID-19 environment is to make the decision that's good for the group and not just for the few. So as you choose, say you're in an industry and if you're an accountant, you're a CPA or an attorney, where you can choose the physical versus the online environment or even a hybrid environment, the ethical thing to do is to choose the mode of business transaction that is best for the whole. That's what a good leader does. There are people in that particular nonprofit who are saying, I'm tired of not meeting. I want to go to the restaurant. But my problem with that is that in that organization, we had so many elderly people with underlying health conditions. And these are people who statistically, if they were to contract COVID-19, would probably not survive. And so we have to be ethical and not make decisions that are just comfortable for us. I always recommend in this environment, if you have a client and if there's any way you can meet them by Zoom, that is just the best thing to do. I know that we like to be personable. And if you're older like me, you like sitting and talking to your clients. Learn how to use that Zoom option because you're protecting yourself and you're protecting your clients. One of the major concerns about allowing, say, if you have a CPA firm and it's face-to-face mostly, is allowing your staff to work from home is that, are they really working? Are they really doing this? Make sure you apprise yourself of the Google technology that allows you to do things, something called T-Sheets, which is actually an app that you put on the computer or the phone of your employee, which is tracking and letting you know, hey, that employee is at home at this time. Now, you can't see into the house, but at least you know that employee is not running around and pretending to work. So you have to do what is necessary to conform. I know that some of us are older. Some of us are I'm in my 50s, some people 60s, 70s, even 80s. You're still practicing law. You're still a CPA. You still enjoy all of that. You've got to conform ethically in such a way as to protect your clients. And you can't be led by what they want. You've got to know what's best for them. As we balance the need to generate revenue, we must be concerned about the health of our staff, about our own health, and the health of our clients and our customers. What about government contracts? Well, that's a big area. Again, you're still talking about a contract. Here's some questions we should think about. How should companies understand the details and the risk of emergency programs that are made available under the CARES Act, including payroll protection program, emergency industry disaster loans? There are all kinds. I live in South Carolina, and I know that I live in Spartanburg County, and I got an email from what they call it, Save the Burg. So you've got all types of state provisions, you got local provisions, and that money from the CARES Act, believe it or not, there's still some money there because there areas or pieces of that monetary grant that haven't been touched. As a matter of fact, there's still billions of dollars left in the PPP loan program, and they're supposed to open that back up here soon. But if you are an accountant, it's very important that you understand that your clients have to contractually prove if it's PPP money, that's forgivable money. And I saw the other day where anything under $50,000 is now like deemed automatically forgivable. But the rules of that forgiveness are changing all the time. I also saw in the news where people in banks had put themselves in. They worked for the bank and gotten that PPP money. Well, they didn't qualify for it. It's fraud. And so they're on their way to litigation and also to jail. What does that mean for the banks that they work for? There you have a going concern that will have to be listed on those financials. What does that mean legally? They're liable. They've got clients, they've got employees who took advantage of government money and stole it this because as they helped others, they thought, what easy free money, let me get me some also. There's a lot of fraud when this is over that is going to have to be faced, and we're facing it even now. So the EIDL loans, the EIDL loans should open up again. Again, there's money left there. You know, certain monies did run out. The unemployment money, you're going to have questions in that area. You're going to have whether or not these people actually qualified for the COVID unemployment. One of the greatest points of contention between Republicans and Democrats is that Republicans believe that when you give unemployment to people, they tend to not want to work. And Democrats disagree. As a matter of fact, when I went out of town and I was talking to one of the store owners, he was expressing that very opinion, that he believed that the unemployment was provoking people not to work. And I had to be honest with him and tell him that that's not the case with my clients. The ones that I've gone out and helped get the PPP and the EIDLs, they didn't get it because they just wanted to have money hanging around. I have clients that are hairdressers and service providers, and people don't want to come face to face right now. Their customer base has been reduced by more than 50%. And if they don't get some kind of help, if they hadn't gotten some kind of help, their doors would have been permanently closed. Again, in my small town, I see businesses closing all of the time. And so we've got to understand that the PPP, the EIDL, the loans that are given on state and locality levels, those are government contracts. They're just not handing out money just to be handing out money. You've got to make sure that you're ethical in the application, that you're honest. And you've got to go back and properly fill out the application for forgiveness. One of the things I advise my clients is, before you go for EIDL, which only gives you $10,000 of potential forgivable money, go for the PPP, because again, $50,000 or less is automatically forgivable. If I'm not mistaken, when the PPP is reopened and the first round is forgiven, people who had it the first time and who prove satisfactorily that they use it for a business purpose can go back a second time. I'm not sure, in this environment, there are predictions that we're about to get a second wave. Who knows what's going to happen? And so we have to be ethical and upfront so those clients who need support, continuing support, and even if your business needs continuing support, that after you prove your ethical use of that first round of funds, that you do indeed qualify for that second round of funds. One of the things that I'm quick to do, that if somebody wants to come into some kind of let's get rich quick, you got to be a legitimate business. And, they do require that you prove certain things. But we shouldn't be people like a man in Florida who was put in jail, I think it was a month ago, because he created fictitious businesses and got hundreds of thousands of dollars that allowed him to get him a luxury automobile, to pay off his mortgage, to do this and the other. That's not what those monies are for. We've got to be ethical and upright, because we're literally stealing taxpayers' money. We're stealing from ourselves and we're stealing from our neighbors. And so we have to make sure that our clients are upright and up forth. And you might have to make the decision to let a client go as a CPA, an accountant, or an attorney, because they're not looking to get back to business or anything like that. They just want to milk the system and build their bank accounts. Not what that money is for. We don't want people violating government contracts. They need to do what is right. Here's a question. How about intellectual property? What is intellectual property? Trademarks, copyrights, and patents. UPS has that symbol on its shirt. That is its trademark. My husband has worked with UPS for almost 40 years, and I always like it when they ask the question, what can Brown do for you? And I always say plenty, because I happen to think my husband is the most handsome man alive. But that's a trademark that's on his shirt. You've got patents, people who have patents on processes, and you have a lot more patents being created for online environments, because that's what's happening right now. And also you have all those things. Intellectual property, of course, is that property that cannot be touched. It's the property that was produced by an individual mind. And the whole point of intellectual property is that the person or persons who created the process ought to be the people who benefit from the process. And in order for something to be deemed an original piece of intellectual property, it has to have at least one process that differs from something else to qualify. And so I've heard a lot of things about an increase. Even though we've lost a lot of small business, there also is an increase in a lot of entrepreneurs. A lot of businesses are opening, especially online. And so if you have a client that's coming through you and wants to say, I'm going to patent this process that I have, I'm going to do this, that, and the other. Well, you've got to do your due diligence if you're an attorney to make sure it's a patentable process. Here's the thing that's ethical. If you're an attorney, if someone comes to you, and I've had this happen, and they've had an idea, and in my mind, it wasn't a patentable process. And so I would not take that person's case, because I don't believe that in the end your process is going to be patented. I'm not taking your case just so I can get the revenue. That's a temptation in an environment where we're losing money. But the better thing to do is to learn how to do business in an online and in a global atmosphere, even a hybrid of face-to-face, physical, and online and global. Adapt your business practices so that you can prosper. Those of us who know how to adapt to what is going on around us can not only still prosper, we can excel if we will go beyond our current way of looking at things. So it's not for us ethically to take on the business that we know we cannot resolve. Ethical people see things to the end. I talked to a client this morning, and they had their tax returns done incorrectly some years ago, and they hired me to do some amendments. And on the state level, we've gotten all of it turned around. It was about 4 years worth of taxes, but I'm still working with the Internal Revenue Service because that engine, it moves so slow. But here's the thing, they've paid me to do that, and until that happens, then I'll do whatever I have to do to make sure that it happens. That's my responsibility, okay? It's my responsibility. Ethically, that's what's going on. International trade, if that isn't the hottest thing that's on the table right now, here is the opportunity for accountants, CPAs, and attorneys to really excel. That is where prosperity lies right now. You want to improve your business? Learn the laws of international trade. People are doing that. People are shopping on Amazon. They're shopping in different forums. And you know what? With the international trade being as it is, sitting from your desk, you can now reach across the United States and pick up clients. Be willing to do that. But educate yourself on things that relate to international trade. Here's a question. What steps should a company take to prepare for import-export clearance? I'm telling you. We've had some disgruntled conversations between our government and other governments. It stopped trade. We had to open trade again. There are potential hostilities between the United States and China. What does that mean? You know, if we want to be able to buy and sell goods, you know, for us, we're service providers, might not be such a thing. But what if you have a client, like my client who lives overseas, who's selling on Amazon? What is that going to do if international trade is halted or stopped? Is that something that we need to be concerned about? Again, at the back of my mind all of the time as an attorney is it legal? At the back of my mind all of the time as a CPA is this going to create a going concern and qualify the financial statements? But in the back of my mind as a human being, as a decent human being, is this ethical, what I'm doing? If I know there's a trade embargo and that's going on, then I need to be upfront and forthright with my clients and say, listen, I know you're selling gadgets and gadgets, but you're selling them to China. And right now there's an embargo. You can't trade with them. And so you might want to think about doing something different, or you might want to think about doing it with another country where there's a free flow of trade. And then you've got to think about, you know, how is that going to affect them legally? What's going to happen if they can't fulfill their product contracts? If people begin to sue and say, you know what, you breached the contract, there you go, a potential for qualified financial statements. We just don't want that. There you go, a potential for illegality and an open door to a courtroom. We don't want that. And neither do we want a reputation of being unethical. We want to be those type of people that when our name is said, our clients, our customers, people who just have heard of us says, now that's an upright and ethical person, a person who does what is appropriate in that time. Here's something that's very important, labor and employment. It's a big thing when you go from working in a physical environment and now all of a sudden everything's online. Employees want to know, you know, what are my rights? And then if you force me back into that physical environment, a lot of people are not comfortable with that because the COVID-19 threat is not only still here, it's increasing. And they don't want to work in that physical environment. They want to know, you know, if I get to work and I need some sick days, are you going to look at me like I'm crazy? Or are you going to give me my sick days? What's going to happen with that? What type of guarantees can you give me that I won't have too much contact? What are you going to do? Give me my own little office space? Are you going to make sure that our desks, our cubicles are 6 feet apart? What kind of labor and employment rights do I have? And as attorneys, what we need to do for ourselves, our own businesses, and our clients is that we need to go in and rewrite our employee contracts to adjust to what is going on in our particular environment. You've got to think ahead about how to cover yourself contractually. That is so important. I was at a store the other day, and someone said something about something happened in the parking lot. Oh my gosh, they're going to sue them. I said, no, they're not. Because look at that sign. What does that sign say? Said this parking lot is a hazard and as accidents happen, and if anything happens to you or your property, we are not liable. And guess what the courts have said? They've said that that is sufficient. That is sufficient, but that's in the physical environment. So, but what happens in that online environment if something goes wrong? Suppose I go to Amazon like I usually do, and I buy a link to a piece of software, and that software is actually coming from Germany, and say it's corrupt, and say that I can't use that software. Well, I can't walk to Germany, and really I don't even know who that is. It's actually Amazon who has to make that good. But look at the frustration that causes me. Amazon may reimburse me, but that's going to take time. Someone's taking advantage of me. The software download that I needed, I really need the download. So now what do I do? So these are the things we got to talk about. What are the type of issues that might come up, especially with employees? And you've got some people who are very adamant. I heard someone talk about seeing people jogging with masks on and actually making fun because they were saying, why in the world would you be jogging with a mask on? Here's something that we have got to remember, especially in the legal environment of business, whether it be face-to-face, whether it be online, whether it be global or hybrid of any of those pieces, is that we have to respect the decisions and the feelings of others. I saw a survey, and it said that the millennials are more concerned about exposure to COVID than the middle-aged, the baby boomers, and that sort. Well, everyone needs to respect everyone. So if you have a certain age group in your working world and they're not comfortable with the face-to-face, then you've got to learn how to give those employees the respect they need to create or to produce an environment that works. One of the things that I like that companies are learning, everything doesn't have to be face-to-face. I actually just don't believe that we're ever going back to that all physical environment. I just don't believe it. I think that COVID has forever changed that now when we speak of the legal environment of business, you're talking about face-to-face, online, global, combination of all three. That's what you're talking about. And we've got to adjust our thinking. But again, I strongly believe that at the forefront of our minds as accountants, CPAs, and as attorneys is how do we ethically adjust? We want to respect our people. We respect our clients and our customers, but if we're going to maintain integrity in what we do, we've got to respect the people who help us make it happen. That's all there is to it. How about public health emergencies? What will you do? When I was out of town the other day, we happened to stop by Walmart, and the people I was with, and I decided, and I'm glad I did, not to go into the store. And so they went into the store and they did the self-checkout, which is a good thing to do these days. And wouldn't you know it, we were home maybe a day or so, and there was a warning that was issued, and this particular Walmart had been shut down because they found out it was infested with COVID. What are you going to do? Of course, the law says that you got to shut it down, you got to clean it up. Well, customers can choose whether or not they want to come back and use your services. Walmart is everywhere. But what about your employees? Now you got a public health emergency. You've got all of those employees who've been impacted by COVID. So, of course, this Walmart is huge. It's a super Walmart. These are hundreds of employees, thousands of people who've been coming through the store. The question is that when did the threat begin? Then the question is going to be, how did it get that bad? Were you testing your employees as you should have tested your employees? Did you check temperatures? Did you require everyone to wear a mask? Did you enforce that? So you have potential litigation in that particular case. And if you got that potential litigation and it does happen, again, that's a note in the financial statements. We may be sued for COVID-19 related health issues, and then what if somebody dies, ends up in the hospital on a respirator? That's a public health emergency. How are you going to respond to that? That potentially, that Walmart was the Walmart of that particular community. And everybody's in and out of that Walmart. So again, I'm glad I didn't go inside, but we were very careful for the next few days to check our temperatures and all of that because of that exposure. Guys, these things just happen. Now, here's my favorite. Tax-wise, what does this mean? Well, we've already talked about the fact that for the first time since I can remember, the tax deadline was extended. We had beyond April 15th. Didn't really impact me because, again, I pushed really hard. I had a couple of clients But I push really hard to make sure that my clients file on time. But I want you to think about this, accountants, CPAs, think about this, is that there are going to be probably a whole lot of COVID-19 relief measures that will be given in the tax, as in temporary tax relief provisions. You're going to have organizations that donated. You've got big corporations and companies right now who are donating to small business. Tax wise, what does that mean? You may have a client who comes to you and says, what are the tax givings or the tax benefits of me giving money? Here's the truth. If it's a corporation, they can only give 10% per year if they want to write it off. So you'll have to tell them that. If they do go beyond 10%, it can roll over. But what is it they're trying to achieve? What is your reason? I do like the ethical implications of why big companies are reaching out. Like I told you, in my city, it's called Save the Burg because I live in Spartanburg County. I like the concept, the ethical concept, that those more prosperous companies are reaching down to lift up that small business owner so that small business owner can keep her company. I like that concept. That is very ethical to me, despite any who we are, nationality, gender, whatever. I think most of us can agree that being good to others is just a great thing. It goes back to what I believe, and that is you treat others as you want to be treated. I think it's a beautiful thing. But what are the implications of taxation? One of the things that I tell a lot of my individual clients towards the end of the year, pack up the house, anything you don't want, and take it to Goodwill. Why? For the receipt, so that we can have a good write-off. Now, the truth of this is that because of the major overhaul of the tax code 2018, and because they have increased the standard deduction, these types of things don't really matter that much, because the standard deduction is now so high that you really can't beat it. Most of my clients, I tell them, I said, you know what? Even with your mortgage interest, your donations, this, that, and the other. Now, one of the things that I would hope to see is that they would allow a special provision for those who donated because of COVID-19 relief. That would be a good thing. So tax-wise, what does that mean? What does that look like? And so you need to make sure of that. And then, if you're the attorney, you're also the counsel, someone who speaks wisely to a company, and you may say to them, you know what, it looks good for you to go ahead and give that 10%, because it increases your image, your reputation, and eventually that will lead to more customers. That's more customer trust. The community knows, hey, you're looking out for us. It's just like even with that Walmart, the way they shut it down. Maybe the community may look at that and say, this is a good thing. They've shut it down because they're concerned about our interests. We always want to present the image that our major concern is that everyone be treated fairly and everyone be treated right. Now, exposure to COVID-19, this is huge. When it comes to the legal environment of business, legally, if you're an attorney, you want to protect yourself, you want to protect your clients. If you are a CPA, you want to protect the books, or accountant, you want to protect the books of your clients, their ability to go and get lenders and to make money and to sell their stock, and to keep prospering. We want that for ourselves. We want that for our clients. There's only a certain part of the environment that's prospering right now. And most of those are companies that have a great presence in the virtual or global environment. We've got to know that. We've got to look out. But if we choose to do business in that physical environment, and even like in healthcare, you can't escape it. If someone needs an ultrasound, you can't escape it if somebody is in the waiting room. How about people who go to dialysis on a regular basis? You've got face-to-face physical. So the court is out right now, but surely there'll be a case that comes up and someone is going to sue an institution because they believe that they contracted COVID-19 in that physical environment. I mentioned to you that my friend, that her uncle had gone nowhere but to a doctor's office. Now, I don't know this, I can't prove this, but I would bet money on this, that family is going to levy a suit against that doctor's office. There are legal protections that have been put in place so that we, if we want to be face-to-face service providers, our clients, our customers, if someone does get COVID-19, that they cannot sue their employer or they cannot sue where they frequented. But that doesn't exist everywhere, and we don't know that the courts are going to uphold this. We're not going to say that. What would the court say that Walmart that we visited, the entire store had to be shut down, had to be cleansed and fumigated? I don't know that the courts won't hold Walmart liable. Walmart's a giant. It's a multi-billion-dollar giant. And there could be a lesson that the courts could put out, say, take care of your physical environment. To what degree is a company responsible for the exposure to COVID-19? To what degree should they have to pay if someone is infected? You might want to counsel attorneys, you might want to counsel your clients, or you might want to even counsel yourself that you want to step in immediately and do whatever is necessary to help that customer or that client or that employee who contracted COVID-19 and potentially in your physical environment. You need to be known ethically. You don't have to sue me. We will take care of the doctor's bills. We will go ahead and pay you while you are being confined and quarantined. Doing all of that up front gives you an ethical face. And people aren't very quick to run to the courts if they know that you're doing everything to be ethical and upright. So in all of these situations, whether it be antitrust, contractual breach, employee benefits, government contracts, intellectual property, international trade, labor and employment, public health emergencies, the taxation implications, and even exposure to COVID-19, in every decision that we make as accountants and CPAs and as attorneys, first and foremost on our minds has to be that decision is ethical. Let's go back to the definition of or relating to moral action, conduct, motive, or character, professionally right or befitting, conforming to professional standards of conduct in the physical, online, and global business environments. And as I wrap up, let me recommend this. And that whatever your legal environment of business, whether it is face-to-face, whether it is virtual, whether it's global, whether it's a combination of the three, first and foremost, be ethical. Do what is right. Have that moral action and conduct or motive or character that is right or befitting. And here is what is so important and what I hope I've gotten across to you. And that is it conforms to professional standards of conduct. And let me say this, let me add this. In your world, you want to be good to your clients, be good to your customers, and teach your clients to do the same. When we are upright and ethical, and people know that, they're not quick to think that we're working against their best interest. So if you have the opportunity, say you have a face-to-face accounting practice or CPA firm or face-to-face legal practice, and your employees are not comfortable in that physical face-to-face environment, why not learn how to conform to our virtual environment? Sure, you come across those customers who say, no, I don't like it. And I've seen it, especially with older people, no, I don't like it. But even if you're going to bring them into your physical environment, set up or structure your working environment in such a way that you're not exposing people to COVID. Let them know that you're taking the threat very seriously, that you're not there just to take their money and just to increase your bottom line, that you're not taking advantage of the current situation, but you still, even in the midst of a COVID-19 mess, have their best interest at heart. So just consider. And not only now, think about tomorrow when the COVID-19 threat dissipates. And one of these days, believe it or not, it will dissipate. Will you still be the same CPA? Will you still be the same accountant? Will you still be that same attorney? Ethical at heart, even though you stand on the foundation of what is legal, even though you want to make sure that your client prospers. Are you being that ethical service provider that people know they can trust? If they need the PPP loan, they know they can come to you. If they get in trouble regarding the PPP loan, they know they can come to you. You are that trusted advisor and counselor. Remember, CPAs and accountants, that you want to keep your clients' books whether they're publicly traded or not. You want to make sure, even if they're using QuickBooks and they got a small business, make sure they're doing everything that is ethical and upright. If you do help them with anything with a government contract, make sure they qualify. Don't allow anyone to persuade you to help them and you know they truly don't qualify. And when it's time for forgiveness, make sure that you know how to guide them through that paperwork or do that paperwork for them. Always remember that you're worth your price. And what makes you worth your price is the ethics that stand up on the inside of you. Anybody can be dishonest. Anybody can go in and say, wow, man, there's so much money to be made here. But at the end of the day, you want to have your integrity. You want to have your ethics. You want to make sure that people say, you know what? He's a stand-up guy. I don't care what's going on. He's going to do what's right. Or you know what? She has always been above board. I know that if I go to her, that she will answer. And even now, in the abundance, perhaps, of phone calls that you may be receiving, make sure that you always return those client calls. Make sure that they know that they can count on you. Don't take this as an opportunity to take economic advantage. Don't take this as an opportunity to be lazy in what you do. Become better, become stronger, become more ethical, and take this season as a time to learn how to adapt to any type of business environment, because you always want to be legal and upfront and ethical in your environment of business. I thank you for your time. I believe just the fact that you're listening, it lets me know that you are concerned, that you remain steadfast in your reputation as being an ethical service provider. So whether you are an accountant, whether you are a CPA, or whether you are an attorney, keep doing those great things that you do, but learn how to adapt what you're doing to your legal environment of business. Guys, this is Dr. Wilson. I appreciate you sharing some time with me, and I look forward to talking to you again.